listeners, and welcome to a Geek Tragedy. Or I should say a Geek Tragedy, because we're still in the middle of spoopy season. It's Margaret time. I'm Stephen, known online as Phlegmatical for various reasons.
Not,
and
is it,
I am
Holly?
your host. I'm talking over everyone. It's Margaret. If you're not watching this and just listening, I was waving my arms in the air like it was like one of those special effects from Time Tunnel, or, you know, something more modern than Time Tunnel, as soon as that was made in the 60s. The 50s. Anyway, so yeah, obviously we're using an old intro because everyone actually is in this podcast. But if you were watching last time, then you know what's happening. If you weren't watching last time, I am one of the clones of Stephen. I think 404 was on last time. I'm 412, having eaten the previous ones. And we had such a good time interviewing everyone that the interviews took quite some time to do. So the whole show kind of piled over into two shows. That's 3 shows. That's 4, two shows like this. Yeah, so we've kind of put it into two shows, and this one contains 2 very long episodes and us whittering about Halloween probably. Right, I'm off to escape into the wild, and I'll leave you in the wonderful hands of the actual real us's, except Mark, who is a clone. Okay, well that was very garlicky.
It was garlicky, absolutely, and there
Lots of rubbing each other in garlic. We should gather together next Halloween and just rub garlic into each other.
It was the most vampire-free interview that we've had so far.
Absolutely. The thing I liked most was how in Romania they turn the pots and pans upside down so that spirits can't nest inside them. I like that. That makes me quite happy. But
talking about vampires, I watched the Legend of the 7 Golden Vampires last night for the first time ever. Peter Cushing and Hammer Film and Shaw Productions, and it wasn't good. Anyway,
it
onwards.
Wasn't good.
No, not great. 1973. There's a lot of kung fu going on, and a lot of very bad vampires and very weird zombies, which sort of pranced along. It was a very curious thing.
How many bulbs of garlic would you rate it out of 5?
Out of 5,
yeah,
I'd give it a 2. No,
2 bulbs.
Give it a 2. Yeah,
I
watched it till the end, so it wasn't that awful, but it wasn't great. Anyway, it was a classic, so now I can tick it off my list. Anyway, where are we going next?
I was going to say I watched Midnight Mass on Netflix, which I've watched before.
That is
very good.
Yeah, I enjoyed
very
that
good.
one.
Very much enjoyed.
I have watched no scary movies at all.
No? Oh,
except my own life.
Do you know why? It's because you were up all night playing 1997's Hercules. The
side-scrolling game. Yeah,
right.
I was trying to get past Thebes, but I just can't manage it.
Got it in.
Were you tucking into spam sandwiches along the way with your greased leopard bikes? Just so we can get all the references.
Yeah, do it all.
All the callbacks.
While we're on callbacks, let's go and visit. It's also very good that Mark's clone did journey with us. It's worth pointing out to Romania, but unfortunately he was eaten by some kind of bird just before we started the podcast. I don't know if we're going to put that in the bloopers reel. Mark eaten by a screaming bird in the background.
The bird's name is Sunny. He is very cute.
Was he delightful?
He was noisy.
He was eating you.
Yeah.
Right, okay, let's go to another part of England. Let's send our clones forward and talk to an old friend of ours. Let's go and find Gary. Gary the storyteller, Gary the bard, Gary the druid, Gary the wisest of all.
Gary the environmental scientist.
To Gary!
Tally-ho!
Thanks, studio. I'm here in the same room, but look, Holly's here. Because,
hi.
Would you believe this isn't live?
No.
It isn't, no. But Holly is here because tonight is our games night, and it's at my house. And the only time we could fit in talking to this particular guest was just before games night. But it's Halloween, and it's our Around the World special, and we are introducing one of my oldest friends in the whole universe, and one of Holly's old friends, Gary, to the pod, who is from Hyperborea. Is that not right, or is it Leng? I can't remember.
Well, some people pronounce it England.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to call it Hyperborea. Hi there, Gary. How you doing?
Hello. How are you guys? Good to speak to you.
We're all right. Yeah, we're good. Thanks. You all right?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah.
I'm not used to being here, so I'm just talking. And then
I know.
There. I don't look at my screen usually, so.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
No.
Anyway, so we're talking about Halloween, which, for us here in blighty, spirits from Celtic roots, blah, 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 Samhain or Samhain, if you're American. And of course, as Gary will sort of solidify forever, the Roman festival called Margaret. Now Gary's got to decide which side to come down. Do I try and wind the beans up, or do I
come down on the side of truth?
Yeah, I think there's no evidence of Margaret existing as a festival.
I don't know. There was an Instagram post earlier that.
Yeah, but that was from you. That was from you, Stephen.
No, it wasn't.
It was in response to something you had said about Margaret.
So over the years, obviously, it's become the de facto holiday, Halloween, for October. We've discussed extensively, actually, with most guests, how, particularly in England, there is no longer like a shared festival that happens every year for like the whole country. But Halloween seems to be something that is beginning to be embraced as something that so many people now celebrate. But obviously, in the old days, it was to do with the breaking down the spirit world. And, well, you can tell us, really, because we want to ask you about, because Gary will introduce himself and give his credentials in a moment, but he is much more versed and learned in the ways of old than either Holly or myself. Mm-hmm. So, Gary, before we get talking about you, and I talk a lot at the start. Holly does all the questions in a minute. I do the host part. Holly does the actual intelligent bit. Just nodding to like the universe in general. Tell us, tell the audience your geek credentials. Tell them what makes you a geek.
My geek credentials probably are a combination of storyteller, folklorist, a druid from 3+ different druid orders, and also a research scientist. So there's bits of geekness everywhere, as well as some that's enjoyed tabletop and live role-playing for many, many years. Although international travel did get in the way of that a little bit.
Just likes to make us look less geeky.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, well, ticking all the geek boxes.
Sucking the geek from... Anyway. Yeah. So that's Gary. He is, as he says, and he's, you can't really play out how much knowledge Gary has in his head about the world in general, let alone specifically folklore and so forth. But do you want to tell us where it all started, and then you can do the follow-ups? Sure. Yeah, cool. Do you want to tell us where it all started in your brain of knowledge?
There is some fairly good evidence that of the old Celtic festivals, there are two that we are fairly confident existed, not necessarily at the same time. One of them is Beltane, or Beltina, which traditionally now is thought of as about the 1st of May, but the other one is Samhain, and this would mark the end of the summer. In the Celtic world, there's a little bit of confusion. There's a fairly solid thought that there wasn't a spring and an autumn. There was just the end of summer, and then there was the winter. And Samhain presented itself as a really, really powerful, important festival. I should say there were other festivals. We know that Neolithic man celebrated the solstices, and we know that from the alignments in the tombs. We know that death was a really, really potent, important factor, because without writing, without computers, death was the repository of wisdom. It was where the experience was held. So those that could tap into that actually had quite a big advantage. And this is probably why the old people were regarded generally with a little bit more respect, because quite simply they could remember a series of events that the people that were still living, that were younger, hadn't experienced yet. So there are a number of crossovers.
If we do away with the internet, people will let us live longer, and they'll encourage us to.
Oh, in the internet, you'll be immortal. You might be physically dead, but all those funny little bits and pieces that you did that you're really embarrassed about will come and haunt all your relatives again and again and again for all eternity.
Oh, that's not a great deal.
I don't like it.
So I mentioned Samhain. I mean, in Wales, even now it'd be called Calengaeth. And in heathen circles, so the Saxons and the Vikings would have something called winter nights. but they all kind of serve a very similar function. And one of the functions of Halloween or Samhain is quite simply, it's the last harvest of the year. So we think of Harvest Festival, of the first harvest. So that's when you get your barley and your wheat in. That's the bulk of the food you get in, and you might slip another harvest. But by the time you come to the end of October, as we would now see it, that's the last harvest. You've got all the food that you're possibly going to get in. You can actually make an assessment in your storehouses of the food that's going to keep you going through the winter. You can make the calculation to see what livestock you can actually feed through the winter. You can make the calculation to see if you can eke some of the livestock to last until midwinter and have a great feast. But there will be some livestock, some pigs, some sheep, some goats, some cattle that quite simply you can't feed. They're going to die anyway. They're going to starve to death. So you kill them and you purify, or you preserve, you cure all the meat you can. Some of it you salt, some of it you smoke, but all the stuff you can't save to keep you going through the winter, like mainly the offal and various other cuts, you have a great feast. So this is the time when you can actually mark the passage of the end of summer, and you have a great feast, and there's lots of fire.
So this is just like Halloween now. So like when the kids come around, there's too many of them, you just whack one.
Yeah, you said you weren't going to mention that, because last time you mentioned it, the police dug up your conservatory, and you've never got all that concrete back.
Conservatory is so crap, actually. That's why it's so rubbish.
Someone one day is going to believe one of these. You know that,
I'm
right?
hoping it's a bit about Margaret.
There is that classic trick to, if you want your garden dug over, you just sort of humorously leave a tip to say there's a couple of bodies dug there, and the police will come and dig your garden over for you.
Okay,
so we have this fundamental way of assessing your survival through the winter. This way of looking to see what you've got that can keep you going through the winter. And because inevitably there is a coming together and a feasting, and there is fire just to keep you warm and just to have the fire there to cure meat and to cook meat, you have a feast, you have a festival, you have a coming together. And you also have this festival, or this coming together, just as the nights are becoming longer and the days are becoming shorter. And now is a great time to reflect. Those that aren't going to, that are no longer with you. You have this time when you think of those that have passed. You have this time when you reflect. You have this time that has this almost ethereal, liminal component to it. It's very easy to imagine those people that have died being with you. And I mentioned Winter Nights. Winter Nights is the Saxon or Norse version of it, the heathen version of it, and that very much is the first frost, or the first marking of this time, exactly the same time typically. And once again, it's an opportunity to remember those that have died.
Oh, there you go.
In a nutshell, there we are. And of course, if you go to Calangaeaf, if you look to Calangaeaf, you actually have a dead horse's head being taken from dwelling to dwelling, just to release the evil spirits and to allow the spirits of the season.
Do they talk?
No, typically it doesn't talk. But
the Romanian legends say they talk.
Well, but there is that parallel with modern Halloweening. Where there is a trick played, or there is a curse if they're not invited in. And as we mentioned Halloween, and we should also remember All Souls. Mm-hmm. These two festivals now are split slightly, and there's another one as well, Bonfire Night on the 5th of November. So with a shift in the calendars, we actually had an extra bunch of days added, just as a correction. And this is where some of those days were placed in. So if you can think of All Souls Night and Halloween and Bonfire Night all effectively being the same festival that lasted multiple days, it's that fragmented form that we have in modern day.
Got a question?
And I mean, I have many questions, but I could listen to Gary
Yeah,
talk
I know. But
forever.
if you do that, then again we'll run out
Kit,
of time.
we'll run out of time. Kit will be mad at me. Okay, I gotcha. So,
and also, when I'm saying stuff, you're actually here now, so you can just throw me off the chair and out the window.
I can do that. You are not wrong. I could do that. So no, I've lost it completely.
About stepping stones into Halloween, what are the kind of like? Obviously, we've talked a little bit on the show about how things like pranks and tricks and stuff kind of.
Oh yeah, how they came from Ireland over to America, and the sort of the tradition of there was like traditions of carving like root vegetables, which seems much more difficult than carving a pumpkin because things like Swedes and turnips, they're not hollow. But is there?
But it is doable.
We were thinking if you want something from someone, rather than carving a face in a pumpkin or a Swede, you could put a lot of Swedes in a sock and whack them with the Swedes.
I wasn't
and
thinking
then
that.
take the things you wanted.
When I was young, when I was young, we did used to hollow out turnips into a kind of a tube that would take a candle, and you could have faces. It's not as grand as a pumpkin because you don't get the back reflection, but it is very, very effective.
Hyperborea is a strange place.
I want to carve a turnip now.
No, you don't.
I do because Gary's done it.
Oh, why? No. Anyway,
now shall I say how I celebrate it normally?
Yes.
Well, it's going to be a question in a minute, like because we're going to say like if you I kind of want to ask, what made those changes happen? So like we know that the church kind of gathered up a load of days and stuffed them into like kind of one area and like subsumed a load of holidays and so forth. But could you mark any particular traditions that have existed throughout the years that have kind of marched out of the original?
Well, there's some really obvious ones. I mean, the winter solstice and Yule. The winter solstice and Yule were festivals there that, as I said before, have been marked from Stone Age times. So people were celebrating, and this really essential pivotal point in the winter, where you've got an empirical way of saying, right, okay, the days are going to become longer now. We can actually look to something a little bit brighter. Yeah, that festival was active and running, and we had that period of misrule, and we had the 12 days of Christmas. All these are legacies of pagan times, and we know that during intervals. Say again.
What about the physical traditions that come with them? The things that we do to celebrate them. How many of those do you think carry over?
Well, I mean, that's an example of feasting, and that's an example of merrymaking. And we know there were suckling pigs at Durrington Walls, and this is the great festival site that led to
Halloween if we were roasting large. No, it's not for us.
led processions all the way to Stonehenge. To my mind, I mean, a good way of celebrating is getting together with other people, getting together, having a feast, and remembering over a fire those people that are no longer with us, having these grand tales to remember the incredible experiences that people that are now dead. You can talk about the amazing, ridiculous stuff that Aunt Peggy used to do, or mad Uncle John, or do you remember when Grandfather Roy dropped his teeth in the wrong cup and someone else picked it up and swigged it down and realised the teeth were banging against their nose.
No.
Yeah, all these bits and pieces, all these great tales that can be remembered. And I think that's one of the important parts of this time of feasting and increasing darkness in the night and having an opportunity for fire.
Get in there.
What about sort of the more, because obviously October now has become, as like a whole month, very sort of, spooky oriented, and there's sort of, ghosts and demons and people dress up to represent like the supernatural and everything. And are there historically elements of that within this kind of time frame as well, or was it sort of more about the narrowed in on sort of the harvest and
Good question. Well, I mentioned the Calangaeaf earlier on, and that certainly indicates there's an aspect of something. I mean, let's face it, a skeletal horse's head is a little bit sinister with a sort of cape or a cowl over the top of it. going round. Yeah, there's a little bit of a sinister component to that.
Is that the same one that wraps at people's houses at Christmas?
Yeah,
the same thing. They just bring it out twice.
Same guy.
Same guy.
2 jobs.
Often the same kind.
Okay.
Yes, so I mean, there is a certain amount of mischief and there is a certain amount of sneaking around. But that, unfortunately, has been completely hijacked by sort of commercial popular culture. I understand in America, it's not even restricted to dressing up as something spooky. It's just a dressing up opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. And indeed in England as well. But the Fae carrying people off, is that sort of thing?
Yeah. So we learned from Stephen when we were
I
doing
learned this from the internet.
It was how I found out that people used to carve like Swedes instead of pumpkins.
Not the people.
Not the people, the vegetable. Like we learned that people would dress up as something that was scary or frightening,
mundane,
or really, really, really mundane, so that the Fae would take no interest in them and would leave them alone. So my question to you, Gary, is if you were in that situation, what would you dress up as to make the Fae avoid you?
Oh, you see, this links into the whole Walpurgis night, or the Walpurgis night. What would I dress up as? I don't think I'd bother to any great degree, because I've got a fairly good relationship with the Fae. I would probably make sure I was showered, I was comfortable. I would probably make sure that I was in a convivial attitude to invite them, or to be aware, so that if they got a bit tricksy, I could actually have my head about me to not fall for any of their playful games that might irreparably cause me to lose 7 years of my life or something.
That would be awkward.
That's sort of what you said.
Yeah, I know. That's very kind of like what I said. But that's we think in similar ways.
Very similar people. Okay, and I think I said a hobbit.
You did.
Just because I like hobbits.
That was not.
But how do you like them cooked?
Oh, rare.
With potatoes.
Yeah.
Preferably no potato.
Everything goes with potatoes.
Yeah.
So, G, how are you gonna celebrate this year in whatever form that takes, or are you going to celebrate at all?
Yeah, well, we will do what we normally do, which is we will fetch out photographs of all those that have passed that are significant to the family, and we will set them at one end of the table, and we will make a meal, and we'll set a plate out for them, and there'll be lots of candles, so the whole room will be illuminated by candles, and we will probably play a board game. Not a board game that we have any intention to play efficiently or to win, but just as a little bit of a background. And the same goes for the meal, because it will be a long meal. And this will be pretty much just a backdrop for us to look up, see one of the photographs and just share an anecdote or two about them. And perhaps just lift a glass and say, cheers, you were a absolute pain in the ass, or cheers, I remember you. And it'll roll on until the game has finished, or we've just decided to give up. The food is finished, or we've just decided that we're full, and there we are.
That's cool. Sadly, we're not going to have our Italian guest on because they have suddenly had other commitments. But when I went through the brief with them to talk about what they would talk about, that's exactly what they said they would do. Traditionally in Italy,
it's a really, really useful therapeutic way of just remembering. I'm really, really bad at remembering the absolute anniversary of various people that have died, but I kind of bring it all together, and it's at Samhain where I remember all these wonderful people, and some people that were slightly less wonderful, and yeah, just remember them.
I do a similar thing, but not on any particular on a particular day, but not on any kind of festival days. But it is a very good way of doing so.
The other thing that's probably worth mentioning is that we've got really fixed now on the 31st of October. In the Celtic calendar, there's only a few of the dates that you can really say were fixed. So the solstices were in that six-day period where the sun pretty much stays where it is. The equinoxes are pretty much where that equality between night and day sits. But the other festivals, Imbolc and Beltane and Lunasa and Samhain, don't really sit on a particular date. It is quite simply, Lunasa would be when the first harvest, when the weather quite simply is cleared up and everyone in the village and everyone has been brought together to actually bring the wheat and the barley from the field, because it's a big, big, big task, and absolutely everyone in that community would need to assist. And similarly, when that last harvest comes, it's pretty much when it's come, when you've looked around and you know what, we can't get anything else out of the land. This is it. You can't really pin that onto a day because it depends on the season and on the year. And in milk, traditionally that would be when the first ewe milk arrives. Well, you can't put that onto a particular date. It is quite simply where the first ewe milk arrives or the first snowdrops push through the ground.
I love how that would be different for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Every different village.
Like, that's just, that's awesome.
And of course, now that Gothmas has replaced everything under the sun, the whole thing just takes the entire month now.
Yeah.
We find that quite interesting as well. The fact that as soon as we tick into the first day of October, everything online changes. Everyone that's interested in it is changing their profile pictures.
I bought my first Easter egg just last Sunday.
This is the second conversation we've had in 2 days where somebody's talked about Easter eggs.
Yeah. Regarding this particular aspect of how the holidays work. In fact, it led to a whole sideline that I had to beat off of the podcast about how everyone likes Easter eggs and how we're collecting cups.
Yeah, you gotta get the mugs.
Let's not do it again.
Sorry.
You come back on Easter, we'll do that one.
Okay.
It's all good. But yeah, okay. So you won't be celebrating the modern day Halloween?
Well, I mean, I've got to say, when my son was a little bit younger, he went out trick-or-treating because, children and chocolate, children and sweets. And we will probably carve a pumpkin and we will put it in the window and we will have a bowl of sweets. Well, I say a bowl of sweets. We normally do have a bowl of sweets. A couple of years ago, we had a bowl of olives, cherry tomatoes, baby bell cheese, and various other bits and pieces. And in the morning, we looked down at the bottom of the drive, and there was all these bits and pieces of olives and baby bell cheese and cherry tomatoes all sort of dumped. So it was a nice idea, but it didn't seem so popular with the kids.
Wrong audience. You should have offered it to the people that were with them.
Yeah.
Probably got a lot more out of it. Okay, so yeah, that's grand. Gary, thank you very much for coming and giving us your time. That has absolutely educated our listeners and, to a degree,
and made me cry.
Us and made Holly cry, which is something that happens on every pod.
Oh, every day.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure and an honour.
Do you want to plug your story club or anything while you're here?
Well, we do have Southampton Story Club that typically meets the first Thursday of every month. If you go onto Facebook and look at Southampton Story Club, you will be able to see where it's meeting this month. As in November will be the next first Thursday. And I can say that it's going to be meeting in the Guide Dog pub down near Beavers Valley.
I've been down there for a while.
Wow. I've never even heard of it.
They still do a good pint.
Oh, no doubt. And just so you understand, as a guy, as how good Gary is, he once had a stage at Glastonbury to tell stories, but couldn't be bothered to turn up. It's that good.
Close to a real story, but not quite.
A lot of Stephen's stories are close to a real story.
Well, they're good stories. They're got to be told well. Kernel of truth. That's what you need. Okay. Thank you very much, Gary.
Although I will be on a stage in Glastonbury later on this year.
No, there you go.
Ooh.
Just on it. You're going to break on, stand there, laugh maniacally, and leave.
Is that the tradition?
Yes.
I think it might be.
Absolutely.
Is it?
Dear God. Shades of Hugo Myatt. We had Hugo Meyer on the other day, the original, the only Treguard of Dunshelm from Nightmare, and he was very much like this the whole way through.
Yeah.
Sweet.
In fact, he hasn't been on yet. We're doing this episode. This is going to be released before his episode. So there you go. So we're giving away next week's guest.
Spoilers.
Nice temporal shift.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Let's go back to the studio. Gosh, wasn't Gary interesting as ever?
I mean, Gary's always super interesting. Like, I could
And
listen
he's
to Gary talk for hours.
He's going to be on stage at Glastonbury again, apparently.
He is, yeah. Maybe
didn't
he'll
know.
actually turn up this time.
Yeah, so good for your benefit there, Mark. Gary once had a stage at Glastonbury to do storytelling, but he couldn't bother to turn up for it, so he just didn't. They gave him a whole stage. He was like, can't bother.
No thanks.
Too many mushrooms?
Got better things. No, he's had better things to do.
And
Oh,
I mean, he did actually say in that interview that we just did
Seconds ago.
Seconds ago,
just did.
that our clones just did just seconds ago, that was a mostly correct story. So there may be some hyperbole in there.
Mm-hmm.
Hyperbole and
I don't know.
Hyperborea.
Likely. And of course, we now know that our American friends are wrong. It's not pronounced Sam Hain, Dean Sam.
Sam and Dean.
Castiel!
Yay!
Beans.
Samhain.
There we go. Look at that.
Mm.
It's not even San, like I say, because I'm from
Do you
North
think-
London, isn't it?
Do you think
Sam.
Castiel was inspired by John Constantine, at least in the looks? Is that trench coat?
I was going to go with Danny DeVito from Batman.
No, don't you sully Misha like that. How
No.
dare you?
My favourite thing still about Misha is the whole, when he's tweeting and doing Instagram, Misha Migos. I love it.
Yeah.
Hey, Misha Migos! You're like, oh, bless him. He's just grand.
he's such a dad. He's just got such dad energy. Like the terrible jokes, like the really awful, like Instagram reels.
Just really pleased
Like,
with everything that's
he's
happening
just
around
so
him. No matter
happy.
what's going on.
He's great. He's just an awesome, awesome human being.
We should get him on the show.
Okay, if you're listening to this, Misha, do come on the show. I'm sure you are.
Yeah, 100%.
That's disappointing. What?
What, the studio didn't miraculously appear with Misha Collins in it?
Expect him to come out of a cupboard or something.
No.
Anyway, so that was Gary in England. I've been there. I think, have we been there before?
You're there right now.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's debatable whether I'm here.
So let's go back to America. Where are we going in America, Mark?
We're going to Miami, I believe.
Ooh.
Miami, which is still mostly standing after the last hurricane. It is a bit windy around there, though, but I think they only got the edge of it.
I think we've got some video for this one as well. It's going to be very interesting. We've got some actual
we do.
footage.
We do,
of,
and
like,
I've finally got my wish of those 16-foot tall skeletons.
Oh, yes, so many
That's
16-foot tall skeletons.
So many really tall things.
And we've learnt that Josh isn't the New York giant killer.
Josh is not the New York giant killer because he does not have any 16-foot skeletons at home.
Well, someone must have killed all those giants in New York to get those
No,
skeletons.
fair
from
enough,
somewhere.
yeah.
It's very true. I would advise that if you don't like clowns, do not watch the footagey part.
Watch the footagey part.
Oh, no, don't. Why with the man? Oh.
Fuck's sake.
Is
To
that a red
America!
balloon? To America!
Well, thanks, the studio, for such a wonderful handover. Here we are in America. Isn't that right, Mark?
Well, we are indeed, yes. Right from the heart of Miami.
Outstanding. And we're talking about Halloween around the world as we continue our pod about the spoopy season. That's right, it's Gothmas, and we have travelled far to speak to our next guest. So we're going to welcome Andy. Hello. And obviously, as we've just been through pre-pod, we're talking about Halloween from around the world, its roots for the festival that we celebrate in England and America, particularly as it spreads across the globe, coming from particularly Wales, apparently, and as we've learned from other interviews, under the guise of Samhain, or as they called it in Roman times, Margaret. Although that joke's probably going to eventually get me shot.
How many times will that have been in this one episode?
Probably about 30 or 35
Oh, dear
times,
God.
I would imagine. So we're going to find out what it's like in America on a grander scale. We've already spoken to one person in Boston who's told us all about what it's like in Salem, particularly with everyone piling in there and and basically touring haunted houses. But let's first of all, before we get down that road, let's introduce Andy. What are your geek credentials here as you join us on a geek tragedy? Tell us about you for a second.
I would say I'm probably a geek of all trades on a surface level, but my real deep geek is Shakespeare and most things Shakespeare, and punny Shakespeare, real Shakespeare, Shakespeare themed.
Anything with a ruff, yeah, and you're there.
Anything with a ruffle, yeah, really. It's yeah.
That's glorious.
Ruffles are big.
It's a shame that Holly couldn't join us this pod. Holly would probably now wax lyrical much longer than we have time for about Shakespeare. So maybe it's good that Holly's not here. Yeah, Mark, do you want to kick us off with some questions about America and Halloween?
Well, absolutely. Thanks for joining, Sandy. Andy and I have known each other for about 20 years now, is it? Maybe?
Probably.
Something like that.
Maybe even more.
Since you were teenagers.
Since we were young whippersnappers, absolutely. And you are currently based in Miami, that's correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've inevitably been talking to people from as many corners of the world as we can find. But I think the story is pretty much that America's stamped its mark upon Halloween, whatever its origins and traditions. We generally now look at Halloween through American eyes, and hopefully we will get to see one of the videos that you kindly took for us around your neighborhood of some of the garden and house decorations which they put up. So, I mean, just tell us what your Halloween is going to be like and what your neighborhood Halloween is going to entail.
I think if you really look at our neighborhood, which goes, I would admit, a little bigger than most neighborhoods will, I think there's just a lot of people that enjoy remembering what it was like as a kid when you could very easily and safely go door to door and get candy galore and, and just be out at night with your friends, dressed in the goofiest thing that you could find, store-bought or homemade. And I think a lot of people just really enjoy reliving that now as adults. And so as homeowners, it's fun to see the kids wandering the neighborhood. It's fun to have a party of your own with other, grown kids. Because how old do any of us really get? But, dressing up, just kind of seeing how creative can you be. We usually have a couple of friends that are de facto costume winners every single year. They never fail to impress. And they're just, they're fun and creative about it. And then it's just great to see like our kids, but also the neighborhood kids, to know that you still live in a neighborhood where kids can roam and wander. And, I think there's a lot of nostalgia.
I was going to say nostalgia seems like the big thing, the big takeaway there, that it's kind of embedded now, and there's a lot of nostalgia around it in the States.
And I think as a culture, not just Miami, but I think everybody just loves something to celebrate. And I think Halloween comes at a time when it's a safe distance from the winter holidays, and you've just gotten back from summer vacations, and it's a good time to kind of get together without any of, the family drama that that comes with more high holidays. So,
and a good excuse for dressing up. I know you were saying that there are families which win the fancy dress stakes every year. I mean, do neighborhoods have competitions?
Neighborhoods don't have competitions, and it's not like we actually hand out a prize.
It's just like they've won.
Yeah, so unless you want,
so
unless you just want another martini, which we're happy to give everyone for participating. But there are parties in town that you can go to. You'd pay to go to them, and there's a prize. There's a cash prize. It's not an actually haunted hotel. It's just the oldest hotel in town from the 1920s. And it was built in the 1920s with a 13th floor, which is not common here in the States. It's unlucky, but supposedly that 13th floor is haunted. So they have a party up there every year, and you can see the 13th floor. and you can see everybody else dressed up. And that's where you can actually win prizes. But in the neighborhood, it's just sort of bragging rights with your friends. And we never win. We host the party, but we never win. So
you host parties as well. So a lot of household parties going on.
Yes, I would say we're probably the only ones on our block that do so, because it just becomes simpler to have everybody in one spot.
And all the other neighbors have gone, yeah, Andy can have it.
Yeah, but over by the, like I said, if you get, like you said, if we get to do the video of the big crazy house, that big crazy house has 3 other semi-crazy houses near it, and they cordon off. They cordon off the whole block, and they'll grill out in their front yards. They're just having a grand old time. It's almost a mini block party.
It sounds wild.
So there's competitions within the house facades and garden decorations. Then really,
I have found that one house has really spurred on a lot of decoration around it. Okay. So, I don't think anybody's going to go as big as they will, not without a huge cash expenditure. But yeah, I think people move into the neighborhood. We were certainly one of those. And you go, oh, is this how we do Halloween in this neighborhood? Oh, okay, I better go get some stuff. So I personally do a kind of cemetery gravestone setup, and every other year I pretty much buy a new gravestone to add to the collection. It usually takes that long for them to design something that I haven't already bought. So and then I have a big spider web, and I have lights, and then I have indoor stuff too, little tchotchkes. I kind of go with creepy old witch lives here. Is sort of my theme. So it's a bit macabre, but it's not campy.
Can I ask how much planning goes into this, do you reckon? I mean, like, obviously you're saying you add to it every year, but like every house must be sitting there maybe in like April thinking, what can we do for Halloween? Is that
we start planning. I send out a group text to our usual suspects probably about the middle of September, just to make sure that they don't plan something else. And usually by the 1st of October, everybody told me, yes, I'm in. Do we have a theme this year? And I'm like, no, the theme is please just come. And most people will dress up. I find the kids have gotten, now that they're teenagers, they're too cool to really go full dress up. The girls still are, but the boys are like, no, I'm a soccer player. See my jersey? And you're like, okay, here's your candy.
So they still want the candy though, even though they're too cool to dress up. Fair.
Yes. We put the teenagers in charge of the candy stash last year so that the adults could hang out in the back garden and not have to answer the door every 10 seconds.
Was that a good
if you guys want
plan
to play
or not?
Nintendo, huh?
Was that a good plan to put them in charge of the candy?
Yes, because we gave them all their candy first. So
Okay,
we said,
enough.
and then, just be kind to the small children and answer the door. Just answer the door.
That's one of the best things I've heard so far. Is like everything you described, particularly, and I think this is true in this country as well. But when you said like it's far away enough from Christmas or the winter holidays, and there's less family drama, it's all very wholesome, isn't it? Now Halloween is just a wholesome time of year when everyone seems to be really happy and supercharged in the positive.
Yeah, I mean, you've probably heard the jokes about Americans and their pumpkin spice lattes. But that's kind of like the first signal. And so every year Starbucks rolls that out a little earlier.
That's what they said here. I said to the guys when we started doing this pod, I said, like, it's really getting quite freaky now because for the last month and a half, and this is like at the start of October, my podcasts that I listen to, the adverts have started being like, hey, guess what? It's almost spiced pumpkin latte season. I'm like, oh my God, stop it.
It's really a horrid drink, but
it is.
It's really awful.
I have never tasted it.
Don't go.
You're not missing anything. You're missing absolutely zero.
Again,
I would highly endorse the butter beer at the Universal Studios in any of the Wizarding Worlds, bar none. Pumpkin
Good
spice
segue. You mentioned to us about the Universal Studios horror events.
Yes.
And you said you'd been to a couple of them.
Yes.
Please tell us.
Okay, so at the Universal Studios in Orlando and in the one they have in Hollywood, California, Starting, I would say, in late August, whatever that first weekend in August is, leading into September, all the way through the last weekend of October. So this year it'll run into November by a couple days. On select days, I want to say it's Thursdays, Saturdays, and Tuesdays. They keep the park open after hours. So after all other guests have left during the day, they open it up at night. And it goes until 3 or 4 a.m. And it's just giant, crazy, scary bedlam. They take all of their sound stages, all of their huge studios, and they turn them into mazes. They're not mazes you can get lost in, but they wind through so that there's plenty of blind alleys and dark corners that you can't see what's going to come next. And it's themed around whatever Universal's scary properties were that year. So this year, I think they've got the Ghostbusters Frozen Empire kind of icicle-y thing happening. Insidious, which I don't know much about, but it seems horrifying. A Quiet Place. So the monsters from A Quiet Place are there. But in years past, it was when they redid Texas Chainsaw, there were people with chainsaws literally jumping off of buildings in front of you with no chain on the chainsaw, but it revs and makes the same sound, which is enough to really set your heart flutter. And then they have what they call scare zones as you're walking through the park. So even if you're not in one of those, I think there's 10 of them this year, haunted houses, you can walk around the rest of the park, ride all the rides, but there'll just be this fog that you can't see through. And
Silent Hill.
And there's all sorts of creepy people in costume in that fog. You're not supposed to dress up so that they can tell the difference between, people who work there and people who are visiting.
Can I come over and visit?
Yeah, you absolutely can. Okay. I will be standing in like a non-fogged area. And they have a Mardi Gras style parade that comes by every about hour and a half or so. Again, with like Jack Skellington or some sort of theme to it. And they're, throwing out candy and all sorts of things and glow in the dark beads and all sorts of fun souvenirs. And, it's one of the parks that serves alcohol. So, and you can go all night. Sometimes they even have actors from those franchises on select nights. I know that Michaela went a couple years ago when they did Black Phone, and they got to meet all the teen boy actors from that movie, and they were over the moon about that. And they all have really hilarious video of my daughter crying in the middle of one of the haunted houses because she got really, really scared by somebody who jumped out at her. She's 15. She's 15
That's when she was...
Oh, no, she was probably about... she's probably about 13 and a half when they did that, when they went. But, it was something jumped out at her. And they're allowed to do anything to you except physically touch you. Everybody that works there is allowed to do whatever. They can chase you through the park. They can, as long as they don't physically touch you, they can do anything.
It sounds exhausting.
Oh, come on. You wouldn't do it if you worked there? That would be like your favorite night of the year.
Yeah, for a while, but I need to have a sit down and a bit of a break.
I was going to say,
maybe you could be inside the house. You could be inside the house in one of the scenes. One of the ones that I remember that was particularly terrifying was a man probably about your size in a huge glass tank with actual live rats just crawling on him all night. I was like, okay, see how that's burned in my memory forever? Mm-hmm. That was from like 15 years ago. But yeah, I was like, okay, creepy guy in a tank full of rats. That's nice. So,
actually, you're not planning on importing anything like that into your neighborhood then as a nice little theme?
No.
But the other thing that because I've been quite fascinated about the whole Halloween thing in America and this tradition of haunts where private houses, will build essentially ghost trains in their back garden. And I've followed some of them on Instagram, and they're fantastic. Animatronics, trucks on wheels. They really go to town on them. Have you been on any of those? Are there any in your neighborhood?
We used to have a little bit more of that in the neighborhood pre-COVID. I would say that hasn't so much come back. What people will do, we don't have a circular drive, but a lot of people do have a circular drive, and so they'll just set up a tunnel so that you're in the front yard, and you can walk through the creepy tunnel. We did used to have a couple of neighbors though that had like a side garden, and it was really easy to go from the front gate of their side garden to the back gate, and it would be all sorts of creepiness and flashing lights and stick your hand into the bowl full of brains / cold spaghetti. I think we did a little bit more of that when I was a teenager, when we were kids. We definitely did it in college. In college, all of the fraternity and sorority houses definitely did that, and would try to make it as creepy as possible for neighborhood kids to walk through and give out candy and stuff. But yeah, there can be a lot of planning that goes into that. I don't personally go into that much planning. If the kids ever wanted to, though, if the teens ever said they wanted to and wanted to help like man it, I'd absolutely let them. Their old school that they went to does it. They when they were still in fourth, fifth, and sixth grade, their school would do that, and the older kids in seventh and eighth grade would set up a haunted house in the school gym, and you could walk through it, and they took great pride in trying to scare the younger kids. So, and they still do that. They still do that over at the school, and outside the gym, they do what they call trunk or treat, which is kind of a newer, fun tradition where
that
you
sounds like you're shoving somebody in the boot of a car.
Yeah, that's what I was
well,
thinking.
it does involve the boot of your car. You decorate the boot of your car so that when the top is open, you've got some sort of decor going on, some sort of theme that you're usually costumed with. And then the kids in the neighborhood walk around the parking lot, and it's an easy way for them to trick or treat. So that's the neighborhood right next to mine, which is good because that one's more apartment buildings. And so it's not as fun to go trick or treating like down the hallway. And that lets the kids kind of be outside and run around. And we've done that in years past. And you get to see some fun theming. A lot of people will do like a time machine because you can make the car look like Back to the Future. And you'll find that our Halloween isn't always scary. We tend to dress up as anything on the spectrum. Like I was Barbie last year, so
no shit.
I haven't sent you that picture. I was Barbie, complete with the pink dress from the movie. And in years past, I was Elsa. When Michaela wanted me to be Elsa, I was Elsa.
That's very similar here. When I take my son out, there's definitely some monsters, but generally it's princesses and people from films. I think that's definitely sort of filtered over to this country as well.
Yeah, we have a tradition that my husband started that we try to give out good candy. You always want to try to give out good candy, but we give out ring pops. I don't know if you guys have those. They're lollies that look like a big piece of ruby, and you can wear them on your finger and then just kind of suck on them as you go. They're wildly popular, and they're kind of hard to find. I have to start buying them in August. But my husband's tradition is princesses get ring pops. So he loves when the little 4-year-olds, that it's like their first, real trick or treat by themselves. So I used to have to miss out on that because I would be wandering our children through the neighborhood. But the last couple of years I got to give away ring pops to princesses, which was fun. And then you have all sorts of people that go, do you have any more ring pops? Are you a princess?
Yes, I'm a princess.
Very, very, very pretty princess.
We have the chap we spoke to in Boston. He's from England originally, and he apparently flies back to England. He's moved to America now, and he picks up all the English chocolate, all the Cadbury's and stuff, and brings them back specifically for Halloween. He says just to spoil the kids in the neighborhoods, they will never eat like Hershey's again because we
had a whole craze that happened the first year that we got Kinder Eggs here. That the whole neighborhood went mad for them. And
how many people died?
Surprisingly, they don't put the toy inside the Kinder Egg here. It's attached to the outside of your little
Do
package.
not eat this.
So it's like, hi, this is on the outside of your package. If your child also eats Tide Pods, give them this separate,
Amazing.
So yeah, ours doesn't have the toy on the actual inside.
Okay. So I think we've kind of covered our 20 minutes very, very nicely. I feel like we're doing an excellent sort of like verbal tour of the world. I think anyone that listens to this podcast is going to get quite a good idea of which countries they should go and visit depending on what their particular tastes are. As we go through, and America sounds quite fun. I want to go to. I'm with you, Mark. Let's go next year to the.
Yeah, damn right.
Buy your tickets early. Buy your tickets early because they do indeed sell out every single year.
Although I'm not carrying you if we have to run away from anyone.
No, that's fine. I can probably stagger away on my own. I'll just go and hug a monster. Or join in.
Probably be surprised by that. You're allowed to.
I'm with you guys now.
You'd be like, buddy, and they'd be like, I wasn't trained for this. This was not part of my training.
Amazing. Okay. Thank you very much for your time, Mandy. That was grand. I really enjoyed that.
No, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Right. Back to the studio.
Happy Halloween.
Oh, we're back. Our clones did well. So that was America.
That was kind of what I'd hoped to see, especially with the footage as well.
Yeah.
And it's like American celebrations of Halloween have just infested the world, really. Not infested, but what's the word I'm looking for? Inspired.
Yeah, there's a lot of parallels. As they kind of, it's like so when she was talking about how it's like the costumes have changed over the years, and England's very similar. So we're catching up, right? So they're setting a standard every couple of years, and everyone's kind of like, oh, that looks cool.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to catch up, not judging by that footage.
Well, it's just not enough space. We're a small country. You don't want to be chased around Universal then?
No,
I'd love to be chased around Universal.
But everything else
sounds great.
Everything else seemed quite wholesome, the whole gating off an entire area so that you can just send your kids out and no one's going to get the police there and stuff to make sure no one's getting snatched and things.
You see that?
No man in
a
a mask with a hatchet is going to be chasing them down the streets. Unless it's consensual.
I don't get haunted house culture at all. I don't get it. I don't. Being scared is not fun.
Okay. So you got the American we just did, where you've got American running around being chased around, the Universal Studios, Hammer Horror style. How about the one in Boston where you get to go to Salem and look at all the witch things? Is that those haunted houses?
Both.
But they're actually haunted houses. How about those beans? Is that
no.
Like
I don't want things to jump out at me. I don't want things to I have a very
like your cat from Alpha.
Like my cat from Alpha. I have a very, very, very well-informed fight or flight response, and it is always flight. Always. Like there is no fight there at all. And so, but what I'm really scared about is like that because I've never really put myself in like a situation where I've tested that. So what I'm really scared of is that someone at some point, if I go to a haunted house and like someone jumps out at me wearing a mask, that I will just sock them one in the face.
What about scary LARPs?
No, scary LARPs bad.
No.
Yeah.
Scary anything bad. I don't want to be scared. I want to be cozy. I want to be wrapped up in my pumpkin blanket with a hot chocolate.
When we were doing
book.
scary LARPs at the forts, Holly wouldn't play them. She would follow me around in the dark tunnels, and I would be standing in tunnels waiting for players to go past. As they went past my shadow, I'd be there going, bleh, bleh, and they would shit their pants and run off. Holly was like, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. And like, I had to like teach her how to hide and then like make appropriate noises as people went past and like just gently brush their faces and shit. She loved that.
I made people shit themselves. It was great. I don't like being scared. Very happy to scare.
You can give it, but you can't take it.
Yeah, this is becoming somewhat of an assault on my character. Should probably stop now.
Telling it how it is.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of your character. However you want to spin it. I love it. It's grand.
Well, thanks.
You're very welcome. Okay. There might be more interviews, and if there are, we'll probably slot ourselves recording these in. But I think there's probably been enough time spent talking to these people from around the globe. All that remains for us to do is hunt down our clones, get those clones, and get those clothes they stole back, and then burn their bodies. And we need to incinerate those clones before they get any ideas of their own, I think.
It's too late. I am one of those clones.
No,
the original Mark.
I told
has
the
been
original
buried
Mark
in the
to
back
watch out
garden.
for those.
He was too slow.
If you start talking like that, I'm not doing this podcast anymore.
Really?
She means it.
Okay.
Yeah, if you get this when we're role playing. Stop
Terrifying.
it. Oh, okay. But yes, what the range for us is collect up the remaining clones, then burn those probably on bonfire night. We'll make a thing about it, and close off this episode. It's been I've really enjoyed it. I think we've learned a lot.
Plus, a massive thanks to all of our guests who gave up their time and their tales to come be on our show.
And I think from most of them, which is I was going to say before we got to things, but I think for most of the guests we had on, I think a load of them, well, at least 2 or 3 of them, would like to come back and talk about other traditions at different times of the year, which is grand. So,
that'd be great.
Particularly Josh, who won't stop talking about Easter eggs.
And mums.
We almost got railroaded into Easter eggs, as you've obviously heard in the thank God I was there for once, but doing my job. Shut up.
It was great fun. I like Easter eggs.
I'd love to have someone back on. And yeah, as Mark says, thank you very much for doing it in the first place. That's a big me. Some of the people that can't be on offered us their time at like 4 a.m. our time and offered to come in before they went to work, which is just phenomenal.
So lovely.
But I just don't think, much as I love our podcast, I don't think it's worth people getting up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to record 20 minutes worth of Halloween talk. So maybe next year, or maybe Christmas or whatever. That would be grand. But what's next? Next week. Next week. Still my beating heart. We have our special guest next week. And there's an advert floating around that you'll get to see. And you probably already know who it is because we've mentioned it in previous episodes. And it's all over my Instagram feed. But yes, next week, scariest guest ever. And
also the nicest guest ever as well. He was lovely.
Scariest guest ever. Really in a Halloween vibe, man. Ooh. Most wholesome guest ever for our Halloween vibe. Should we say who it is? Or should we leave it to the advert?
Leave it to the advert.
Go and watch our advert. When we will return to talk all things television from when we were kids, or when Mark was slightly older than the kid but still very young.
I hear it's quite nightmarish.
There's a mystery. Thank you all for listening. It has been an absolute joy travelling the world through the vicarious nature of our clones. We'll see you again soon. Enjoy yourselves, take care of each other, and much love. Goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from me. I started waving too early.
Are you tired yet?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. And it's goodbye from me.
Are you going to say the thrice goodbye thing or not? Fuck's sake.
How's the waving going, Beans?
I hate it.
You have been listening to A Geek Tragedy with me, Plague Mantle, and my best friend, the excellent Holly Properly, and our actually famous guy, Mark Caldery. If you like this, there is plenty more at patreon.com/A Geek Tragedy. Production is by Kit Britnell. Our logo and artwork is by markcaldery.com. Music is by Borislaw Kozielski. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Geek Tragedy. Email us at geektragedypodcast@gmail.com. Subscribe, leave us a rating and a review. And don't forget to tell all your geeky friends. Also, a big shout out to all of our genius geeks